and improve working conditions for troops. It's the kind of thing Japan has avoided since its unconditional surrender to the Allied powers in 1945.
The Kansas City Chiefs coming back late in their game against the Tennessee Titans, defeating them 22-17 in overtime. Here's Chiefs quarterback Patrick Mahomes cutting the Titans' lead down to 2 in the fourth quarter.
3rd and 9, Mahomes gets out. Mahomes on the run, at the 10, at the 5, to the goal line, in for the touchdown.
Sound courtesy of NBC. Chiefs kicker Harrison Butker with the game-winning 28-yard field goal. I'm Laura Cantor, Fox News.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to One Nation. So glad you're here. I'm Brian Kilmeade. We are just 3 days away from the midterm elections, and tonight we have two of the leading candidates, most charismatic of the lot. Dr. Mehmet Oz wants to be that senator from Pennsylvania, and Carrie Lake thinks she's going to be governor of Arizona. The polls say she will be. But before we get to her incredible lineup, I want to talk about the problem. We are a nation of action, or at least we used to be. We used to all agree that there was a problem. But as with a normal democracy, we would disagree on how to fix that problem and have debates of who the right person is to fix the problem. But now we're having trouble even agreeing there is a problem. Former President Obama was on the stump this week, and he always gets me thinking.
Violent crime has gone up over the last 7 years. But by the way, it's not just the last 2. Remember the other guy was in charge and crime was going up? You never heard anything about it from these folks.
Right. Obama's right away. There were issues with crime. There's even issues at the border. But in the past, presidents tried to fix them. When it comes to the border, Obama took action. He did crack down on migrants already in the country, made efforts to deal with the overwhelming amount of unaccompanied minors coming in. And the Republicans at the time wanted more deportations and wouldn't hear about any talk of amnesty. It seemed kind of normal. It was called a debate. But when things at the border were heating up for the Trump administration, he did what American leaders usually do. He moved people in charge to fix the problem, and pressured other countries to fix their borders and took their aid away until they acted.
President Trump has waxed and waned in his support for Nielsen, but felt it was finally time to make a change. In choosing Customs and Border Protection Chief Kevin McAleenan to replace Nielsen, President Trump is signaling that border security is his top priority for the department.
Look, he did what he had to do to get the border protected, even if it meant moving money around, which ticked off a lot of Democrats.
The president is rejecting these bipartisan bills which would reopen government over his obsession with forcing American taxpayers to waste billions of dollars on an expensive and ineffective wall.
It looks so natural. Right. Past administrations would identify a problem, and debate was always how to fix the problem. But now, the Democratic Party, led by Joe Biden, just deflects and oftentimes flat out denies.
We have a border.
Yeah, right. When CHOP, a lawless zone, was formed in Seattle and violence in Chicago raged out of control, Trump took action, tweeting this: "I'm bringing out the military for this national emergency. They will be stopped." Not everyone was happy with it, and although the benefit of him doing so could be debated by very level-headed people, the intent was not. He was trying to fix things. Past presidents tried to fix things, unlike Democrats right now in blue states that don't see anything that needs to be fixed.
The data shows that shootings and murders are down in our state by 15%, even in New York City. Safer places are the Democratic states.
Yeah, but did she compare it to 2020 or 2021? And what she also neglected to mention is the sharp rise in total crime across the city. You know, those things called robbery, rapes, grand theft auto, grand larceny. Does that sound safe to you? Deflect and deny. Let's look at, for example, oil and gas prices. Now, most Americans are struggling to fill their tanks, not happy when they top it off, and are worried that they won't be able to get heat for their homes this winter. We need a fix. Do we agree on that? Biden can only blame.
Oil companies' record profits today are not because they're doing something new or innovative. Their profits are a windfall of war.
Is that solving a problem? Is that a plan? No, it isn't a plan. I thought we all could agree that inflation is a problem, for example. The data shows it's at a 40-year high. But to Joe, no.
Prices are returning to where they used to be. Economists call all these things transitory effects. Today, we received news that our economy had 0% inflation in the month of July.
It's insane, right? Americans expect their commander-in-chief to address their problems head-on, not to deny one that ever existed. This is not acceptable to me. And on Tuesday, we'll find out if it's acceptable to you. All right, to expand on this and whatever else is on his mind, the great Sean Hannity has been summoned on an important weekend day. We're on the precipice of a historic midterm election. Sean, welcome to One Nation.
Only you, Brian Kilmeade, and LJ can get me to work on a Saturday night. I usually take off on the weekends. This is an important night. We're only 3 days away from Election Day. Sincerely, it's great to be with you. A lot going on these races. When you look at the aggregate, I'll tell you this. If you look at Georgia, North Carolina, the Senate races, you look at New Hampshire, you look at Pennsylvania, Ohio, Wisconsin, Nevada, Arizona, and Washington State, I would bet pretty much everything I had that those races combined will be less than 100,000 votes that will determine the control of power in the U.S. Senate. If you go back to 2016, 3 states Donald Trump won combined 77,000 votes. If you look at Joe Biden, 2020, if you look at Arizona, Georgia, and Wisconsin, 43,000 votes determine the winner of those 3 swing states. So what I'm telling everybody, yeah, all of the elements for a wave election are there, but don't be overconfident, and you have to assume that your vote is going to put it over the top in whatever state you're in.
Right. Sean, the thing that struck me is what I did in the open a little bit is I can't believe we used to debate on what was wrong, and the Democrats would have one approach to it, and Republicans would have another. Now we can't get Democrats to, I think, acknowledge the top 5 issues the American people want addressed. It's the most bizarre thing possible, from the border to crime to inflation, talking about what bills they passed, Inflation Reduction Act, which doesn't address this. They want to talk about climate change. How do you explain this?
You can explain it simply because what do they have to run on, Brian? They can't run on the economy. There's a 41-year high of inflation. They can't run on record high gas prices. We have nearly, 4.5 million illegal immigrants because Joe Biden is inviting them into the country, aiding and abetting and trafficking them all around the country. They can't run on safety and security because they're the party of defund, dismantle, and no bail laws. They can't run on fixing the education system in the country because they're the people advocating for gender identity education, CRT, and they're the ones that are not teaching the fundamentals of reading, writing, math, history, science, and computers. So what do they have? What do they have left? The only thing they have left is the demagogue. You know, I said at the beginning of this year they're going to run on 3 things: hating Trump on January 6th, that has now fizzled out. They would run on the abortion decision, that's fizzled out and backfired because we're now finding out most Democrats want no restrictions at all on abortion. That means that a woman would be able to have an abortion up to the moment of birth. And the last thing they've got is what they've done and said and run elections on in perpetuity, which is Republicans are racist, they're sexist, they're homophobic, xenophobic, Islamophobic, transphobic. They want dirty air and water, and they're going to cut your Social Security, Medicare, and veterans benefits, all of which are an outright lie. But when you have nothing positive to run on, that's all you've got, and that's all they have. That's why.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good point. I always thought that if you're going to do something, pass something, you should be proud of it. And it's up to it's up to the people to understand, or their party to embrace. So I've been watching all your town halls. Have been sensational, from Georgia to Pennsylvania to Arizona, Nevada to Florida. I mean, you've been to all these places just 10 days, and you've been all over this election. 2 people stood out to me that caught me by surprise. Number 1, Carrie Lake is a superstar. I think it's pretty universal. Number 2, I love Casey DeSantis and Tim Scott. In particular, they did them things that I looked at your face. I think they caught you almost by surprise, how talented they were and how motivated they were. First off, Casey DeSantis.
You know, well, first, her story is moving. On a personal level, I can relate to it. My mom had advanced stage 4 breast cancer, and I watched her get a mastectomy, watched her go through chemo and radiation. She had, I think, 19 or 20 lymph nodes impacted, and she managed to survive, but they half killed her to survive. And she clearly was emotional. Thank goodness she too has survived. My mom died from other illnesses not long thereafter, but it was horrible watching her own mother go through that, so I could relate to it. I would agree with you. Her story is extremely compelling. They got, a great family, and I would assume that Marco Rubio and Ron DeSantis will win big on Election Day. And then you got Tim Scott as a rock star. I've become very close to Tim. He's a very religious guy. He's even set me up to meet his own pastor, who I happen to like a lot. He's a very good man, and I just think the world of all of them. And I think we got some real stars in the Republican Party. One thing the Democrats don't have, Brian, and unless you can think of one, they don't have any stars. You know, if I had to guess today who